Good morning, everyone. I'd like to go ahead and call to order this August 14th, 2024 meeting of the Monterey County Planning Commission and ask Commissioner Gomez to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Some microphone is microphoning. Oh, that was Mr. Mendoza from the Zoom, I think. Speaking of which, I'm going to ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Good morning, Commissioner Shaw.
Here.
Commissioner Mendoza.
Yes, due to medical reasons, I'm invoking the just cause of AB 2449.
Thank you. Commissioner Getzelman.
Here.
Commissioner Work.
Here.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Here.
Commissioner Deal.
Here.
Commissioner Monsalve.
Here.
Commissioner Gomez.
Here.
Chair, you have a quorum. And Amy Roberts and Commissioner Deal are absent today.
Commissioner Daniels, because I'm right here.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Daniels.
I would beg to differ.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Now is the time I'm going to ask the secretary to provide the instructions for anybody who, after all this time, might not know how to participate successfully remotely. Ms. Beretti?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. So today's Planning Commission meeting is also available via Zoom and broadcast. And so if you are participating by Zoom, either on your computer or by phone, to participate during public comment on the Zoom platform, you can raise your hand by opening the reactions button and at the bottom of your screen and clicking the raise hand icon. On your mobile or landline phone, you can raise and lower your hand by pressing *9. Another way that you can participate in today's hearing is by sending an email to pchearingcomments@co.monterey.ca.us. This email address is also on the agenda today. We do monitor this email during the hearing, but once the hearing is start, we cannot guarantee that we will get all comments that come through the email, but we do monitor actively. In real time. Members of the public who do wish to speak, when it is your turn during public comment, you'll be granted permission by the meeting clerk to unmute yourself during the public comment. And when you're asked to unmute, please accept unmuting. You must unmute yourself. On the Zoom platform, there's a mute button at the bottom of the screen that looks like a microphone. And if you are on your phone, landline or mobile, the mute/unmute button is *6. Thank you.
Thank you. That's important because now it's the time that is set aside for the public to comment on any item that is not on today's agenda, but which is under the purview of the Planning Commission. Is there anybody here who would like to speak on that matter? I see that Mr. Breyer has his hand up from the council's office. Did you want to say something?
Yes, thank you, Chair Deal. The video function is off for panelists, and the law requires that it be on for commissioners who are calling in remotely under the law. So I'd ask staff if they could please turn that on, and if it's possible to turn on the chat function, that'd be good too. That way, if necessary, I can advise folks privately.
Thank you. I think the clerk, did you want to speak to that?
Thank you, Robert. I went ahead and turned on the video for all panelists. In this Zoom, we have it automatically set without a chat, so I am not able to turn that on during a meeting.
If I may, Robert, if you do want to communicate, you can start a Teams channel with myself, and then I can monitor that and relay anything to the commissioner chair as needed. And you can do the same with the clerk.
All right, thank you, I will.
Yeah, thank you.
Much appreciated. Thank you for keeping us organized and legal. Is there anybody else in the public, from the public side, who would like to speak today on a matter that is not on today's agenda? I don't see anybody in the chambers. Is there anybody wanting to speak on an item not on the agenda? Seeing none, I do see one hand up on Zoom, Madam Clerk.
We have a person labeled as call-in user 1. I went ahead and asked you to unmute, if you could accept that.
Hello?
Hello?
Hello? Hello.
Hi, we can hear you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for the opportunity to speak and to make a public comment by Zoom. I greatly appreciate it. My name is Jeannie Ford. My comment is in regards to the Big Sur Land Use Plan update, which is also referred to as REF 210024. And I would like to speak on two items. Firstly is my family has lived in Big Sur for 4 generations. My grandparents purchased property from Rogelio Castro in 1936. Our property is close to Deachins, and in fact, it's wrapped around on 3 sides by property that's now owned by Deachins, Big Sur Inn. My family is greatly opposed to any changes or increases in the rural community center expansions, including more parcels to the RCC designation or to adding any more land uses for Deachins to use. That area is very congested. The access to our property goes through Deachins, and any additional commercial activity would have a major and negative effect on my family's property. So we are greatly opposed to any expansion in the rural community center designation changes or additions to additional parcels for Deachins. We love Deachins. My grandfather and Helmuth used to hike from Carmel, and they actually bought their property together. They would camp out on Rogelio Castro's property. So that is said in the greatest respect for Deachins. The second thing I would like to quickly add is regarding a moratorium to allowing any more short-term or long-term rentals in Big Sur until the LUP and the updated LUP has been completely revised. There seems to be a lot of confusion in the definitions of the various kinds of accommodations, rustic campgrounds, park models, all kinds of things. And so I would like to ask that the Planning Commission refuse or resist or install a temporary moratorium on allowing any more of these to be allowed. And those are my 2 comments. And thank you again for the opportunity.
Thank you, Ms. Ford. Much appreciated. Is there anybody else on Zoom who would like to speak on a matter not on today's agenda? I'm not seeing any hands. Am I missing anything, Madam Clerk?
No, I do not see any hands on Zoom or new emails.
Very well. We're going to go ahead and close that item on our agenda and move forward to agenda additions, deletions, and corrections. Madam Clerk?
For the record, we received the distributed additional correspondence for agenda item number 7, PLN 220214, Dublin, and agenda item number 8, PLN 23002888, Glass. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'm suspecting that those items are available on the side should anybody in the public be looking for them. Much appreciated. Now is the time for commissioner comments, requests, and referrals. And I'm just going to start by saying I did check with the secretary that the item that had been, the referral that had been made by Commissioner Daniels with respect to exploring and explaining the possibilities for moratorium on visitor serving units in Big Sur, since that continues to come up, is still pending. And we do expect staff to come back and explain to us what that might mean and how it would work at some time in the future for those who are interested in that subject. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. Commissioners? I'm seeing a silence. Commissioner Mendoza has not got his hand up. That being the case, I'm going to move on from commissioner comments, requests, and referrals. And the first item on our agenda is approval of the consent calendar. Is there anybody on the dais who would like to pull any items from the consent calendar, or anybody in staff? Seeing no hands on that, me go ahead and ask the public if you have any comments on items on the consent calendar. Seeing no hands in the room, I see no hands up on Zoom. Madam Clerk, am I missing anything?
We do not have any hands on Zoom or new emails.
Thank you. That's terrific. All right, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar. Commissioner Monsalve so moves. Am I getting a second from Commissioner Gomez? So it's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent calendar. Madam Clerk, we're going to need to take a roll call because we have a remotely participating member. Would you go ahead and do that, please?
Yes, Commissioner Shaw?
Yes.
Commissioner Getzelman?
Yes.
Commissioner Gomez?
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez?
Yes.
Commissioner Work?
Yes.
Commissioner Mendoza?
Yes.
Commissioner Deal?
Yes.
Commissioner Monsalve?
Yes.
And Commissioner Roberts and Daniels are absent. Chair, the motion passes.
Thank you, much appreciated. And I just want to comment that I so appreciate that we have recently instituted a consent agenda for items that are not controversial. I think it's really helpful. All right, that brings us to item number 4 on our agenda, moving right along, which is a verbal presentation from the Transportation Agency of Monterey County about Highway 68. I don't know who that is, but Mr.
Hello, my name is Doug Bilsey. I'm a principal engineer.
Welcome, Mr. Bilsey, and we're going to just leave it to you to deal with Alex and get your presentation, should you have one, or not if you don't. Move along.
Yeah, okay. Again, thank you. Good morning, and happy to make a presentation on this great project that we're working on, Scenic Highway, or Scenic Route 68 Corridor Improvement Project. So the extent of the project is essentially all of the signalized intersections between Monterey and the city limits at Salinas. And it's been something we've been working on for a long time in this region, trying to solve 3 objectives, really. Address safety concerns, improve traffic flow, and connect the wildlife. So this is a better picture of what we're actually looking at. So we have 9 intersections along the corridor, and we're looking at upgrades to all 9 of these. And then the wildlife crossings, to the north, you'll see, you know, the Fort Ord National Monument, and then to the south, you have the incredible Los Padres forest area. So you just have this road that disconnects the wildlife habitat. So we needed to reconnect the habitat, and we do that with wildlife crossings. So we're looking at, there's 2 culverts which you can probably crawl through. A human could crawl through. They're just not adequate, but we would be upgrading 2 existing crossings and providing 3 new ones. So let's start with the easy part. The wildlife crossings, this is what they will look like, and you can get a relative size for that, and these are all of the different wildlife that we expect to use that. And some people say, well, how will they know? You know, do they read signs? And, you know, we've seen this work successfully in roadway projects where, you know, it takes a little while, but they realize what the routes are, and they've been successful elsewhere. So now to the road part of it, we're looking at 2 alternatives that essentially address the traffic part of the project. Alternative 1 would look at roundabouts at every one of those intersections, and alternative 2 would look at signal modifications, which would be an intersection widening. So we would keep the road the same between intersections, but as we approach intersections, we widen to 2 lanes, then narrow back down, widen to 2 lanes, go narrow back down. And they don't all have to be constructed at once, and we don't expect that to happen, but we're looking at it as a long-term solution. So we looked at every one of the intersections so that we could get the environmental work done. Here's a look at a roundabout for those of you that aren't familiar with that. And then the signal modification, this is essentially what it would look like at the intersection. It doesn't show you the merge down, but you can see that there's 2 through lanes at the intersection. Again, for those of you that are not familiar with the roundabout, the one critical difference between a signalized intersection and a roundabout is the roundabout, the intersection, it's constantly using a traffic signal to give green lights to the 2 or maybe 3 movements that are not conflicting. So it's thinking and it's working and it's serving a pair of movements at a time. So that means all the other movements have to wait their turn, and it goes in a cycle. Not very effective in comparison to a roundabout. A roundabout, once you get up there, once there's a gap, you go. So pretty much all of the approaches can be served at the same time. There's no sharing other than, if someone's in your way, you yield to them. The way that's done is it gets rid of basically all of the conflicts in the middle of the intersection. It makes it a right turn. So everybody's basically making a right turn, merging into the circular path, and then getting out when they need to. And by doing that, you get rid of all these points of conflict. And more importantly, all of these are the more serious collisions that you have, the head-ons, the broadsides, the T-bones. So one of the benefits, the main benefit of the roundabout is it's a much safer alternative, and you essentially eliminate fatalities and serious injuries. There still are some, and there are fender benders at these merge points. So you don't get rid of collisions, but you get rid of the serious collisions because you don't have the head-ons. And again, you still have some serious collisions from typically reckless driving and DUIs, but you get rid of the poor judgment collisions. So another benefit of roundabouts is it slows down traffic. Again, it's a safety issue. When you are going at a higher speed, your chance of survival is diminished tremendously. So this is with a vehicle speed to pedestrian, pretty well established. Same thing happens with cars, same thing happens with bikes. If you're hit at a lower speed, your chance of survival is greatly increased. So for those of you interested in the stages of delivering a roadway project, we summarized it in this graphic, and this is probably complex, but when you look at the actual flow chart of what it takes to get a project done, it's actually much more complex than this. So this kind of shows you where the steps we did in each one of these boxes does not represent the effort. It's a graphic, and what we just finished was the preliminary design alternatives and environmental review, associated environmental review. So we just finished this. I want to go into a little depth on that. So when you look at the alternative 2, the signal modification, we went in and this is essentially the design. This is the design for a roundabout. And then when you superimpose those, and then you put a buffer around them, we get area project impact that we studied. So all of the environmental impacts in the API have been studied in this. So we have a little latitude in the final design when we want to make some changes. We can do so and not have to go back to the environmental document for the most part. There are some pinch points, but we gave ourselves a little breathing room on that. So what would it look like? These are the pretty pictures. So this is a graphic at Jocelyn Canyon Road of what the signal modification would look like. And you can see that by widening the road, we wanted to avoid the habitat on the, this is the south side, so this is the church on the corner of Jocelyn Canyon Road. And you'll see that we had to push the road project widening over here to the north. So there's a pretty significant wall that has to be made for a long area in comparison to a roundabout where you still need a wall, but just at the center of the intersection. So your right-of-way is narrowed, your takings is narrowed, and your environmental impact is smaller for a roundabout. This is an alternative with hardscaping, which is Caltrans' preferred approach. It doesn't look great, so we think that this is more applicable to the Monterey area, and we'll be working with them to envision a landscaped alternative. It's not a different alternative, it's just an approach we'd like to see. So where are we at now? We've selected the preferred alternative to be the roundabouts. So we have done the environmental evaluation. We've looked at the impacts of the two alternatives and come to the conclusion that the roundabouts achieve the project purpose and need with the least environmental impact. And we are starting final design and looking at right-of-way and permits. The designs at this stage 2, we're looking at, instead of a single lane roundabout, the picture I showed you earlier, we're looking at a hybrid that's more in line with what you've seen constructed by Pebble Beach. So that pushes a little bit more traffic, and that's in our final design. We're going to be looking at that as a design alternative. And since we had the buffer, we've already looked at the environmental impacts of that. So the whole process, the key here on this graphic is that the whole time we're doing this project, public input and feedback is critical, so is secure funding. But this public impact, it doesn't stop now that we've selected our preferred alternative. And the effort we put in was, I think, greatly appreciated from our partners at Caltrans. We did several public hearings. We did them bilingual. We did one in Salinas. We did one in the city of Monterey. So I think we went above and beyond, and we got a lot of good feedback from the public. So just real quickly, I think, I wanted to talk a little bit about a project that kind of came about when we did our analysis. Just in general, the congestion on 68, it's a big regional issue because when Highway 1 gets congested, we've seen traffic starting to use Carmel Valley Road and Laureles Grade, and then they come back and they just try to circumvent the congestion on Highway 1. Likewise, in the morning, when congestion gets really bad going westbound, people start diverting through Toro Park. So you might have heard, but we did some work in Toro Park that's associated with this project, but it was outside of the environmental impact. So I don't want to get too involved in that, but I just wanted you to know that those two things make us focus the AM congestion going westbound and the PM congestion going eastbound. They seem to really be caused, or the biggest throttle to that flow are these three intersections. So we're focusing the first phase on San Venancio, Corral de Tierra, and Laureles Grade. And that would be roundabouts at these three intersections. But at the same time, we're looking at adaptive traffic signal control. That's basically upgrading the signals, trying to get the most out of them. And while they will improve it, they have that fundamental limitation where only two movements get a green light at a time. So the roundabouts push more traffic, they solve the congestion, they reduce the collisions, serious and injury collisions, fatalities. So they'll be there, but it's going to take a while. And you look at that graph, we have to look at funding, and it's unrealistic to think we'll do all those intersections. So this adaptive signal control is going on, right? The selection and implementation is going on through Caltrans. So we really support this, and we want this to happen as soon as we can possibly do it. We hope in months, but Caltrans is doing their best to get adaptive signals in place as soon as possible. So with that, I can answer your questions.
Thank you. Very interesting presentation. Commissioners, are there questions? Commissioner Monsalve.
Thank you so much. Great presentation, very interesting, definitely. But my concern with the roundabouts is how are you anticipating or preparing for bicycle traffic with those roundabouts?
Yep, that was a decision that we made that widening Highway 68 to bring in a formal bike lane would be an environmental challenge. After that was done, there is a bike facility that you can make for the shoulder. So what we're trying to do now is work with Caltrans to widen the shoulder just a little bit in places and put grates down so that they can become a bike facility. And roundabouts are considered to be a safe alternative for the bicyclists. So the roundabouts will be an improvement in terms of negotiating through the intersections. The cars go down at a lower speed, and so it's an intersection improvement, but we also are working on a parallel path with Caltrans to try to bring up the shoulder where the bikes users are now.
Thank you.
Commissioner Gomez?
I just had two questions. One of them is the difference in price tag on these two different projects, the roundabouts and the signal improvements. If we have that, what typically is the difference? And secondly, how many intersections are there on? I'm not familiar with the area, so how many intersections are there on Highway 68 that you'd like to get done? I know there's at least 3, obviously, but
Yeah, there's 9 intersections. The range in price, the roundabouts, it's hard right now to put a price tag on it, but for comparative purposes, the roundabouts are expected to be about $160 million, and the signal would be $190 million. So just for comparative purposes, a signal modification would be more because of the right-of-way. And the right-of-way for a roundabout, and I think I showed you in that illustration, the roundabout's a little more constrained, so you have about 40 million of the project cost is in right-of-way for a roundabout, and 70 million for a signal modification. So that's all, again, buying land and mitigation is hard to put a price tag on, but comparative, I think it's a good, gives you an idea how much more land is taken up by the signal.
Answer your question, Commissioner? Thank you. Well, I have a list because whenever there's a good presentation, I always have questions that shouldn't reflect on the presentation in any way but positively, because I wouldn't have questions if I didn't know more than I used to. A couple of the easy ones. One of them is, I'm not clear on how you say a roundabout reduces speed prior to getting to it, because I'm looking at the pedestrian crosswalk that's pictured prior to entering the roundabout, and the safety analysis says that people will be going more slowly. Well, they're not. If they were at an intersection, they could be stopped. So how do you deal with the pedestrians prior to entry into the roundabout, and what is the slower speed comment really mean?
Good question. And that's your easy question, right? Well, maybe this is probably a better, oh, sorry. Can you switch it? Let's see. Do I switch it to presentation here?
Alex, can you share staff right?
So when you look at the new design for a roundabout, you'll see that what our industry is looking at is you definitely will have to go through the intersection slower, but more and more it's about how you approach it. So this curvilinear aspect to the roadway, that's to slow down the vehicles. So as you're coming here, you don't have a straight line of sight to the intersection. So you're slowing down, your eyes are going, instead of ahead 1,000 feet, you're starting to look immediately ahead of you. And so as you slow down and you curve down, you are looking at this the crosswalk. As a signal, what happens is when you're coming up here and making a right turn, your eyes are looking up ahead. You don't have a real good sight, a line of sight for the pedestrian. So a lot of times the hook is what gets bicyclists and pedestrians, these right turns. And so that's basically, you do stop the traffic. So the people crossing the street here don't have a problem with this traffic going through, but it's always the right turn and where their eyes are. So your eyes aren't watching the crosswalk. compared to here. When you're here, you're looking straight at the crosswalk, you're looking at the pedestrian. So that's why it's better.
Okay, that's exactly my problem, is because I don't understand that. The right turn is the problem. This is nothing but right turns. So if I'm going in here, I'm going to be looking at how to get myself into the roundabout, and I think probably the first few times rather focused on that. So I'm concerned about the not stopping, the pedestrians going across, my vision being sent to the left to see who's coming around that roundabout while somebody comes up from the right. That's just what my picture tells me.
Well,
So I guess how are we going to make sure that when we put a pedestrian crosswalk there, that we actually provide that space, that breathing moment? Because my experience of Highway 68 is there's pretty constant traffic.
It is constant traffic. The one thing, too, you have to remember is a collision is sometimes a two-way issue. And one thing about the roundabout is the pedestrian goes through one conflict, has a refuge in the middle, and then goes through another conflict. So the pedestrian is looking to the left here, sees the car coming. The car is coming in here, and once they're in, they can start looking ahead to see the pedestrian. So there's an area right here where the car can stop, and there's an area right here where so let me back up. This is a really, the key to that is we separate the conflict with the pedestrian with the conflict with the intersection. So that's why this little space here is for the car to wait. So first you look for the pedestrian. Once the pedestrian's not there, you go here for the car's refuge, and then you wait for the opening in the traffic. The pedestrian goes to here to the refuge in the middle, and all they have to do is look at the car approaching, and then they go to the next conflict, and they just look at the cars coming at them. So the statistics are showing, that the pedestrian collisions are down. So I think the easy way to answer your question is you're separating where the conflicts are, and the conflicts are at a lower speed, and the pedestrians are breaking down their movement into pieces too.
So our understanding is that the speed would be reduced during the area, throughout the area where there's the divider approaching the roundabout? Is that where we're assuming that people are going to slow down?
Yeah, it's designed so that you can't go more than 25 miles per hour at any point from entering to exiting the roundabout.
Can't?
It's
This is Monterey Car Week. No, we can't.
Well, until you get to the high performance, what you do is you draw a line right down the middle, and you look at what a typical car can do, and it's designed so that a typical car, even pushing it, let's call it uncomfortable after 25. Whereas a signal, it's just really comfortable at whatever speed you feel like driving, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I can see that. Thank you. That's really helpful. I haven't understood the discussion about slower speed, because I was thinking, stop is pretty slow. And this isn't what they call the turbo roundabout like the one in Hollister. So there's not that many, these are not planned to have as many moving areas as that, right?
Yeah, I don't want to get into the design of the turbo, but the big difference between the turbo is once you're in a lane, you have to kind of select your lane, and there's curbs here to separate which lane you're in. So
But
Pebble Beach.
That's not what we're talking about.
No,
This
we're
is
talking about Pebble Beach
style.
where you can move while you're in the intersection to get to the right lane.
Excellent, because that one in Hollister's tough. All right, so now we get to the more complicated question, which is we're the Planning Commission. So how would this project relate to planning, future planning? And that would include things like, this is a designated scenic highway. How is that consideration to be taken into account with all these projects? How long would it take, and would it alleviate traffic to the point where additional development would not be constrained by adding traffic? How do you envision these projects as relating to future planning considerations? And that's because that's what we do here.
Okay, let me try to remember the points of that, but correct me if I miss something. I think to take a step back, you have to look at our industry, and we're kind of at a point now where we're saying we can't build our way out of congestion. So whatever we build, we have to realize that there will be congestion. And you know, to give you a little background, I was at TMC 30 years ago before Fort Ord closed, and when we did that, we forecasted way back then, almost 30 years ago, we knew there was going to be congestion, and we already knew we weren't going to be able to widen 68, widen 101. So what it is, it's more about a balance and getting the most out of what we can without ruining what makes this place special. So that's why this is a balancing act. So when we went to the roundabouts, we're pushing as much traffic as we possibly can. And when you look at this alternative, this is really pushing as much traffic as you can get through an intersection and really through the corridor without widening between the intersections. So we made the difficult choice that the environment wins here, the scenic corridor wins here. What makes this corridor in Monterey County special won out. So we didn't widen the road. We're settling with a project that's primarily about safety, and people will adjust. And so when you look at a development, your other part of your question, we now have a roadmap on what we need to get the most out of that system. So I would say your mitigation measures should be reflective of what we are proposing on the corridor. So the funding of this is, it's a big task, and we probably won't be able to fund all of the intersections. So as you review development along the corridor, I would hope you would align your mitigation measures with that. But again, even CEQA is kind of backing out. I'm not a CEQA expert, but the level of service standards and those types of things that we've hung our hat on for years in review are now kind of more based on vehicle miles traveled and less about solving congestion and just keeping efficient traffic flow. So I don't know if that answered your question.
It's a good answer, and I appreciate it because it gets to my fundamental point, which is that the 2010 general plan continues to rely on the projection for widening that road with respect to future development and the designation of development areas. And so if we are fundamentally making a choice that in the measurable future we're not going to do that, then that continues to influence the appropriateness of certain kinds of development along that corridor in a way that might not have been the way the general plan looked at it, because they made different assumptions. They were going to widen the road. I mean, that's what's been all along, is that in '82 they decided they were going to widen this road, and that was going to allow us for additional development. But what you're telling us today is that that outlook is not happening in the foreseeable future. We should not rely upon it. It's a changing situation that we should consider whenever we do analysis on a project. And that's really important and fundamental to what we do here.
Yeah, I think this is your new vision for the corridor.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate that. That is the most important thing for me, and also the recognition that it remains a scenic highway as well as all the other things we're talking about. I really appreciate that. Commissioner Gomez?
Chair, I just wanted to say, I think that the roundabouts make sense, but culturally, I think is a challenge. Because we've had a few added in the area that I work in Santa Cruz, South Santa Cruz County, and the challenge is getting. And I'm not sure what strategy you have to culturally change people's minds about what we're used to. We're used to intersections, not roundabouts, and I'm not sure what if anything is going to be done to provide information beyond what we're talking about here about how effective roundabouts are in general for safety and for the flow of traffic.
Well, not to be cute about it, but if I had $1 for every time someone found out I was a traffic engineer and say, you know what, I just went through a roundabout somewhere, and they tell me, and it's like, what are people going to do here? I think everybody I've seen is concerned about a roundabout they've had gone through. So they made it. That's basically what I tell them. I go, what did you think? And they go, well, I made it, but what about someone else? And I think it's just intuitive. I think it's part of our culture, I think, in California, is to start looking at roundabouts as a better alternative to signals. So maybe the best way to say that is we're preparing people to drive outside of Monterey County, because you're going to see them everywhere. How do we get them prepared? We are doing a video on our TAMC web page and bilingual that will show people how to negotiate a roundabout. And people are reluctant to change. I think that's probably a bigger issue, but I think your point, getting used to it, but I think it's just change and the idea that, I'm used to a signal. Once it gets there, I think we had a big backlash on the roundabout at Pebble Beach until it went in. Now, a lot of people that I've talked to said I was originally opposed to it, and once it went in, it wasn't as bad as I thought. As a matter of fact, it solved the problems that it was intended to do. We think the same thing's going to happen here. You see it on a piece of paper, you go, wow, that's something I haven't seen. But I think when they're put in, I think you're going to get a big support from the public.
If I could add, I know I was party to a lot of the discussions around the Pebble Beach roundabout, and I know the level of concern was astronomical about what was going to happen there. And it is, to some extent, it's got some more complications than the ones we've seen depicted here, because it has the Pebble Beach gate in the outflow, so it makes it a little more complicated. And I would absolutely second that the major concerns that everybody had ahead of time have evaporated to all intents and purposes, and the roundabout is looked at very positively as a way to not be quite so congested in that neck of the woods. And I was skeptical about the transition period, but I don't even remember that we had a particularly high number of accidents, although I have been told that you often expect a slight uptick at the very beginning, but that is often balanced out later down the road. And certainly in Pebble Beach, it has been. And people were very vocal about that one, as you might imagine. So I would second that particular experience. Any more questions? Oh, Commissioner Monsalve.
Thank you. And just in comparing to the roundabout at Pebble Beach, there's no crosswalk there, right?
Yeah, there's a bit difference between the two, and I have to go off the top of my head, but the big difference with Pebble Beach is that you have the bridge over Highway 1 that just compressed everything. So, and you have an off-ramp only on the one leg when you get off southbound. Mm-hmm. So the difference here is going to be a typical four-legged, and even if it's a T intersection, you're going to have a more space, and you're going to have when you have two lanes, you'll be in the inner lane to make a left turn or a U-turn, and you'll be in the outer lane to go through. Whereas in Pebble Beach, you kind of have that raceway. Everybody's like, hey, everybody's going through.
Going in the same direction.
Yeah. You do have pedestrian crossings. I've gone there on bike. I've gone there on pedestrian. I can't remember if they're there. Yeah. I think you probably have. It's kind of similar on 68. It's not that pedestrian heavy of a area. What we can do is in a heavier area we would have maybe flashing beacons for the pedestrians, warning signs. But I think the design is going to be good for the pedestrians. The few that do 68.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Thank you. You said that we can't build ourselves out of congestion, but I believe that we can use time to, get ourselves out of congestion. And what I mean is that it's something that maybe, I don't know if the supervisors would have the ability to get certain industries in Monterey to start at different timeframes, because everybody is set, well, okay, we're going to start at 8 or 9 or 7 or whatever that time is. So everybody's heading either to the peninsula or back at certain time frames. So and I'm not sure if they would have the ability to do it, to say this particular industry can either start at 7:45, 8, 8:15, 8:30. I know it's whatever the business are. And so I'm not sure if they would be able to create some system where not everybody's heading down at the same time. So anyways, that's just one thing. In terms of changing the culture, I've seen it many times, is that if you have, people are trying to beat a a green light or a yellow light. So they're going to zoom through. We just had somebody killed over there in East Salinas. And some young man, 20-year-old, was trying to beat a green light. And the dad and the little 3-year-old just got run over. So we can't change that culture of people trying to do whatever they're going to do. And if we have a system of red lights, same thing's going to happen. Somebody's going to say, I think I can pass this green light. And so there's going to be more dangers in terms of the lighting. So I personally, think that roundabouts are pretty good because, you see it all the time. I see it when I'm at a stop and there's a red light. And people just, they see the red light and they just keep on going and turning right. They don't stop. It's a culture. And so for me, I think roundabouts will slow down traffic, and I see it back in the east side, the big roundabout that's there. So I think it's important that we do figure out how to reduce the speed. And if it saves lives, then that's more important than even any cost, and it seems like it costs less. A life is, how do you put a price on a life? So anyways, those are my 2 cents.
Thank you, Commissioner. If there's no more commissioner comments, I'd like to open it to those on the floor. If anybody in the chamber would like to comment on this matter. I don't see anybody running forward. Oh, here's somebody. Well, come on up.
Hi. Thank you for a wonderful presentation. I'm a big fan of roundabouts. I had 2 questions. I remember at the Pebble Beach roundabout, once it got made, there was a large box truck trying to negotiate the turn, and I remember them stalling. There being a little bit of an issue there. I was just wondering maybe if that's user error or if there's been any analysis about the box trucks that make those turns. I know with Car Week, we have large trucks with more cars in them. And my second question is,
Care to tell us who you are?
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Chess Moore, Monterey County resident. My second question is, are roundabouts scalable? It sounds like we're not talking about widening the road anytime soon, which is cool. I'm just curious, like, if and when development does happen, does the roundabout get scaled with that development? Do you add more lanes? And those are my only comments and questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you care to answer? You might. It's a presentation.
Excellent questions. I think that's, you get into the challenge of the design of this. So, of course, I want to talk about it. If you could put the presentation back up. So on a roundabout, the challenge we had was at every intersection, you have to decide what the vehicle that goes through here is and what movements they can make. So on 68, we could have made it so that all those, we call the box trucks, the big oversized trucks, can make a U-turn. If we did that and made every intersection a U-turn, they would be a huge design. So that was one of the challenges we had. We had to decide, we can't make it so that every intersection is a U-turn for huge oversized trucks, but we did make it so that those oversized trucks can go through every intersection and make a left. So you have a through and a left and a right turn for oversized vehicles. And then the huge ones we see at Laguna Seca, they'll be limited in the number of intersections where they can make that. Scalable, very excellent question, actually. What we did was, as I pointed out earlier, we had a single lane design, and we studied a bigger footprint so that we could build a single lane. And if we wanted to, because that is the minimum conflict points, and then it could easily be, let's say we just put a bigger circle here, and we're going to build it for this ultimate configuration, and then we might essentially white out the center lane until we need it. So they can be built in phases or scalable. And then the other thing I want to point out is when you build it, we did talk about the 25 mile per hour. That was the real challenge on 68 because when you make this wide enough for the trucks, it makes it really hard to keep down the speed. So the Caltrans design team was exceptional at finding that balance too. So you'll see that these are a little bit bigger circles than they may need to be otherwise because of these large trucks and these turns, but they still end up being so that it's 25 miles per hour maximum speed through there. So that was a very challenging point. I think that answered the two questions.
I'll get a good stab at it anyway. Thank you. I don't see anybody else in the chambers. Is there anybody on Zoom? I don't see any hands up. Madam Clerk, am I missing anything?
I do not see any hands.
There's one just went up.
Just kidding. Dwight, I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Did that unmute?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Yes, I enjoyed the presentation by Doug. Wanted to see more about the information he talked to in the adaptive signals. He mentioned it very briefly as to what is currently being done to look at the AI, which artificial intelligence adaptive signals. I understand that Caltrans is possibly looking at doing a pilot study and to see how they would actually improve the congestion and other parameters on the 68 corridor in comparison to the proposed roundabouts. And also wanted to get more information as to if the adaptive signals would work in a much better way, which they've not been tried yet. Would that then make the roundabouts not necessary because it solves the problems for a much less cost? And I believe the commissioners should look at the cost of that too, if they have any reason to compare that to the roundabouts, where the cost of the roundabouts is in the millions and the adaptive AI signal controls would be like about $500,000. So if he could address what is being considered and how that would impact the final decision on roundabouts.
Thank you. Would you care to identify yourself?
Sure, Dwight Stump, and I'm part of the Corral de Tierra area. Also responsible for putting together a lot of information online regarding the roundabout proposals and AI signals, and have a website that is 9roundabouts.com. It's the number 9roundabouts.com for those that want to get more information about the alternatives.
Thank you. We appreciate that. And I would just start by saying that the Planning Commission, while we're always interested in the costs so that we know in the back of our heads what we're talking about, we have no jurisdiction whatsoever about budgetary matters. So just to be quite clear about that. Would you like to respond to those questions before we forget them?
Sure. The adaptive is really an excellent idea, and Caltrans embraced it. It's a little separate from the project per se, because we don't think it will be a solution, but it could certainly, as was suggested, it will improve conditions, we feel, and it could be significant. So no matter what, we're not going to build 9 roundabouts right off the bat, and we will probably have adaptive in way before the roundabouts are funded, even the first one. So we are taking that approach. That, we will see the next step is to get the adaptive in, observe, see what it does. My experience with signals is that it is limited. And we've done some modeling simulations, and these are just kind of hot off the press. But when we look at that new hybrid roundabout design, we think that first phase being Laureles, Corral de Tierra, and San Venancio, that might be enough for the corridor. We really could get so much benefit out of just getting rid of that pinch point. And I don't know if we have to go back to my presentation, but if you remember, the east side of the corridor is really the pinch point for the AM and the PM. And if we take care of, especially San Benancio or Corral de Tierra and San Benancio, if we got that freed up, and with adaptive, and it does have to have adaptive in there to get the most out of it, we think that could get us a lot of life out of what we have now. But when you look at future development, you look at airport expansion, the long-term solution, I think, is the roundabouts, but the adaptive is a really good interim solution.
Thank you. Now I don't see any hands up on Zoom. Madam Clerk, am I missing anybody this time?
No, and there are no new emails.
Thank you. That being the case, I'm going to go ahead and close public comment on this matter. And I don't believe we need to take any action except to thank you for the useful presentation and something that we will keep in mind as we go forward with projects and understand a little better. I really appreciate that. And that brings us to item number 5 on our agenda, which is PLN 220251, Ardua 31 LLC. And Ms. Zepp, I believe you're presenting on this item such as it is? All right, we'll give you a second to get organized there.
Good morning, Planning Commission and Chair Deal. I'm Zoe Zepp, the project planner for PLN 220251, Ardua 31 LLC. Today, staff is recommending a continuance to a date uncertain or the October 9th Planning Commission hearing if the applicant is able to make it, as new information was recently provided in addition to the requested grading plan. This includes additional developments, a request for reasonable accommodation, and additional tree removal. Staff requires additional time to review these new additions as they were not previously evaluated with the original proposal, and some of the information came in after the deadline for staff to submit the final report for review and distribution.
Thank you. There were a lot of additionals in that statement, I must say. So this is a recommendation for continuance to a date uncertain by staff. Is that correct?
To a date uncertain or the October 9th.
You can't have either or. It's got to be with one or the other. So we're going to assume that you said date uncertain?
Yes.
Thank you. All right. Is there anybody on the commission? Commissioner Monsalve?
Is this request coming from the applicant, since the applicant changed the scope and the applicant needs to update the arborist plan?
No, the request is coming from staff.
Thank you. And I think the rules that we just voted on this morning allow for the staff to do that. Anybody else have any questions from the dais? Seeing none, is the applicant or applicant's representative here? Would you like to come and say anything about this? You don't have to, but whatever you say has to be on the microphone.
Alex, can you please share staff right?
And we don't really need to go into any project specifics unless you feel it's absolutely relevant.
Oh, sorry, the HDMI, sorry.
I believe it is. Once again, thank you for the time. My name is Dan Manser. I'm the responsible for the property, the owner, and planning to live here. So this is a house I'm building for myself and my wife, Tricia, here in the audience. If you could bring up the presentation.
Yeah, I think we're working on it.
So if you remember, I was here last meeting. So once again, thank you for your time for the second time. I'm hoping that this discussion could actually save everyone's time. And we'll see.
Whose computer?
It's this one right here. I plugged it into the HDMI.
I want to be really clear here that the staff continuance is the matter. The staff has requested a continuance, and that's really all we're going to talk about. And we haven't got the ability to move forward today anyway because we don't have any package that would support it. So I think what's most important to hear from you is if this is something that you really object to and think was terribly unfair, that would always be important for you to have an opportunity to say. But otherwise, I would be really interested in when you think that you'll be able to supply what staff has said, because the question before us might be whether the continuance was to a date certain or a date uncertain. Staff is currently recommending a date uncertain, but we aren't going to hear the project. So just trying to be clear without being repressive about that. So feel free, go ahead with that in mind.
Okay, I'll try to make this timely. Next slide. So the project, the house was recommended to go forward with the exception of the trees. We're talking 62 trees versus the 41 trees. And there's really three categories, just to be clear. One was the development footprint, the dead trees, and the neighbor complaint trees. And all I really care about is A. In other words, A is the dominant thing here. If we can't remove the dead trees, we can't remove the dead trees. As you mentioned, I did get the grading report in on time. That was there. The grading report was not accepted, or it was, they felt changed and continuous to sometime in October, was what I was told. The disability access, there's always been disability in there. I didn't know that you had to give a petition for that, but that has been submitted and documented proof. I was also asked to give an alternative grading report, which I already provided an alternative grading report, and a third and fourth arborist report. So I think it's a reasonable request, and the grading report did not substantially change. And I really would like to get it done up front. I've never got answers on those three, any of those three. And the first one is really about how close can trees be to the house? Is it 10 feet or is it 5 feet? So the next slide. So it's just a reminder, this is where it is, right across from school. All homes are developed around it. It's in Pebble Beach. Half the property is going to be untouched, which is on the other side, and then the house is there. And every property along Viscano and along...
Okay, you're talking project specifics now. We are not talking about the project at this time. This is simply about the matter of continuing it, and the question before us is, do you have any objection to continuing it to a date uncertain? If you have a date certain in mind, you are welcome to say that. But we don't have the ability to go through project details right now. We don't have the materials in front of us, and we don't have any platform upon which to do that. So this is counterproductive right now. We understand, the piece that I've gotten from you that I appreciate is I think staff understands that you want some clarity, and I think they'll work with you on that. I trust them if they won't, but.
I sent many emails asking for clarity. There's been no clarity.
Well, we'll try to do our best to encourage that to work through, and I hope that it will, but we can't do that here.
I was going to show the grading report relative to the original.
We don't have the ability to do anything about it, so I'm asking you to talk about the details of the continuance, which is going to happen one way or another because staff has the ability to ask for that as a matter of right. So it's going to be continued. The question is, do you have thoughts about how that might work best?
How that might work fast.
Right. Are you saying you want a date certain later? Do you want a
date as soon as possible?
Okay.
And preferably the discretion that they can make a decision without having to come back, or no matter what, it has to come back here.
It's agendized for continuance. It has to come back here.
I made huge accommodations. The last time you said, provide a grading report, I provided the grading report. Made huge accommodations to be here. And I've gotten zero back from the planning as far as the three fundamental questions we talked about last time. So if I did provide the grading report, and the grading report is consistent with the property, so I don't have any understanding why it was under continuance. We provided multiple reports.
I will right here ask staff to meet with you at a level to determine what's going on and facilitate moving forward as sensibly as possible. That we can do, and I think the Secretary's nodding her head. So we'll see if we can make sure that this, that the Commission is, that the planning department is responsive and gives you clear understanding of what exactly they need. But in addition to that, they need time to look at what you give them. So that's also part of the equation.
I did provide the grading report in time, so that was provided.
Okay, very well. I'm not going to defend or any of that sort of stuff because there's no reason to do that, except to say that the pieces that go into it are notice, having the material in the first place. So that's the clarity issue and the material issue. Staff has a chance to review and analyze that, and then they have to make all their deadlines with respect to notice and getting the package mailed out. So all those are moving pieces that will make a difference in this. And I think we have to take them all as important. I appreciate your passion here, but we can't go into it. And there's a technical reason why, which I won't go into, but it's really counterproductive to do this. Because it means we have the problem of making sure that every commissioner who's not here, who might subsequently be here, will have had an opportunity to review all the material that was presented at this meeting. Otherwise, they can't vote, which might mean we don't have a quorum. So it's really better not to slop over on the edges besides the question of just time and efficiency. Because we can't do it. We can't do anything more than we're proposing to do. There's no scope to do it in.
Is there a date? I guess that's the...
Staff, through the chair, staff is recommending a date uncertain, but we do have a meeting scheduled with the applicant on September 5th. And so that's why, as stated earlier, we would consider the October 10th or October 9th hearing to be enough time following that meeting. But because we don't know what the outcome of that meeting will be, we recommend a date uncertain.
Well, when we get back to the dais, we can talk about that. But it may be that, is there any possibility that staff could meet with the applicant sooner?
We can meet sooner, but I offered 3 or 4 meeting dates, and that was the one chosen by the applicant.
Gotcha. All right. Anything further?
So I can't go through the preparation that I did.
No, it's just not, there's no point in it. It's not what we're doing right now.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
Thanks. Is anybody in the public who would like to speak on this matter? I see no hands up. Madam Clerk, on Zoom, we don't have anybody online?
No, and there's no emails.
That being the case, I'm going to go ahead and close public comment on this matter and bring it back. Commissioners? Commissioner Gomez?
I'm prepared to make a motion that we move this to a date uncertain.
Commissioner Monsalve?
I second that.
Been moved and seconded by Commissioner Gomez and seconded by Commissioner Monsalve that we continue this item to a date uncertain as recommended by staff. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and call for the vote. Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Shaw? Yes. Commissioner Getzelman?
Yes.
Commissioner Gomez?
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez?
Yes.
Commissioner Mendoza?
Yes.
Commissioner Deal?
Yes.
Commissioner Monsalve?
Yes.
And Commissioner Roberts and Commissioner Daniels are absent. Motion passes.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. That brings us to item number 6 on our agenda, which is REF 240016, the Coastal Zone Updated Accessory Dwelling Units and Junior Accessory Dwelling Units Regulations. Who have we got to present on that today? Mr. Sanchez? Oh, great. Take it away.
Test. Good morning, Chair Dio and Planning Commissioners. I'm Edgar Sanchez, and I am the project planner for REF 240016, Coastal Zone Updated ADU and JDU Regulations. After notice of the hearing was distributed and in the process of the final review of the draft ordinance and the land use plan amendments, compared to the current state planning and zoning laws, staff identified additional issues that need to be addressed prior to consideration by Planning Commission. Staff will continue to refine the draft ordinance and the land use plan amendment language and return to the Planning Commission once these final issues have been addressed. Therefore, staff requests that the Planning Commission continue the hearing to a date certain of September 25th, 2024. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, do you have any questions? Commissioner Gomez.
Just for clarification, could you try to identify for us some of those issues? Because we just did that for that one we just continued. It's too vague, I think, for me to vote for it. But it'd be good to kind of identify the issues. That way we have a sense as to why we're continuing it.
Yeah, there was a couple issues with the draft ordinance, and then we, in terms of the size requirements that the state requires, and then there's also some issues that we're going through with the Big Sur land use plan and the applicable size limitations on ADUs.
Madam Secretary?
Yeah, and if I may just augment that as well of what Mr. Sanchez has said, staff just wasn't, because there were a few small details that were resolved, we simply weren't able to finalize the ordinance and get it into a final form that would be appropriate to bring forward for a decision. So yeah, it's just kind of an understanding as we start going into the details for finalizing ordinances. On occasion, we find just a couple of details that make it that we can't bring the whole rest of the item together. So that's what happened in this one. But we're close, very close.
And I would just add from my opportunity at the Big Sur Land Use Plan meetings to realize that until you have pretty much your draft language for an ordinance, councils can't really weigh in. And so they end up being at a late point in the discussion. And if they uncover some issues with consistency or language, that may have to be revised sort of what we would consider to be at the last minute, but isn't really because you can't review it till it's final draft. Anyway, there's a lot of moving parts here.
And I would just like to add, we do, whenever possible, we really were confident, we really do try not to notice an item if we think that there's kind of substantive review that hasn't to happen. So this was just something that sort of caught staff and council off guard that just had not been caught previously. So, but we do, under normal, we really do try not to get to the point of noticing without really solid confidence that something's not going to trip us up. We miss every once in a while.
No, I appreciate it. Trustee, I just wanted to get a little clarification. Thank you.
And I would just add that September 25th, we really hope to move forward because I know how many people are waiting on this particular ordinance. It's really affecting a lot of people's plans. There's nothing else from the commission. I'd like to invite the public forward. Does anybody have anything to say about this item? I see somebody coming forward. All right, welcome.
Hi, my name is Martha Chavarria, and yes, I was here last meeting, so I really appreciate the update and the question, because it was vague. Again, like I mentioned, we've been working closely with Craig Spencer and trying to, collaborate and understand what the challenges are. So I do appreciate that there's some legal terminology that you guys are working through in order to process this ordinance. Because yes, I did mention that we've been patiently waiting and we've been working together for quite some time. And I did mention that this is something that was brought back in 2011. So I'm really glad that this is now back in the service and we're trying to move this important issue forward. So I just wanted to get one more clarification on this recommendation from the Planning Department. So this legal ordinance language that needs to be adopted, it's presented here first, and I understand that it goes to the Board of Supervisors, and then it goes to the Coastal Commission. So my question is this language and this collaboration, are you guys working with the Coastal Commission? Is this something that you guys are already in the forefront having conversations and dialogue, so then there's no hiccups when it gets to that final stage?
Thank you. They'll answer when you're done. Okay. Or when we're done with public comment. So they'll make a note and they'll answer that.
Thank you.
To the best of their ability. I know they know almost everything, but maybe not everything. Anybody else in the chambers want to speak on this item? Seeing none, I see no hands up on Zoom. Madam Clerk, am I missing anything?
No, and we have no new emails.
That being the case, I'm going to bring it back to staff to respond to anything we may have heard in public comment, which we just did.
Yeah, to answer the question, the process sounds correct. It would go through the Board of Supervisors and then the Coastal Commission. So we've been working with Coastal Commission staff to refine some of the tweaks on the ordinance, and so that to ensure that there's consistency with the Coastal Act.
I think what I'll add there is it is the commission that makes the decision. And as with any discretionary decision, we can't guarantee that we hit all of the issues correctly and that there will be no hiccups. But we have definitely, staff's worked very closely with Coastal Commission staff to do the best we can to have an ordinance that we hope will fly through the Coastal Commission, but no guarantees.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to go ahead and bring it back to the dais. Commissioner Monsalve.
Thank you. I think we're ready for a motion.
Certainly.
So I move to continue the hearing to the date certain of September 25th.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Been moved by Commissioner Monsalve and seconded by Commissioner Gonzalez that we continue this item to September the 25th. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and call for the vote. Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Shaw,
Yes.
Commissioner Getzelman,
Yes.
Commissioner Gomez,
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Yes.
Commissioner Work,
Yes.
Commissioner Mendoza,
Yes.
Commissioner Monsalve,
Yes?
and Commissioner Roberts and Daniels are absent. Chair, the motion passes.
Very good, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and call for a 10-minute break here, a recess, and that would bring us back at 10:25. Thank you, everyone.
Conservation Zoning District with a 10-acre per unit density and a visual sensitivity overlay. There also is a 20-foot height restriction. The site is 10 acres in size and is located one parcel over from the west side of Loralis Grade. Oh, let me go back for a moment and just allow you to read that part of the slide about the Resource Conservation Zoning District, which allows residential use as a primary use such that it can be achieved without adverse effects to or that it is subordinate to their site's resources. And staff is recommending an administrative permit and design approval because there are no adverse impacts to public viewshed. This combined development permit project includes the construction of a 2-story single-family dwelling with an attached garage, which is approximately 8,864 square feet of floor area, and a detached accessory dwelling unit of 1,200 square feet. The project includes the removal of 35 coast live oak trees, including 1 landmark tree, and development on slopes in excess of 25%. The siting of the home on this vacant parcel is limited by several easements and the private Camino Escondido Road, which take up areas on the parcel. The road is shown in gray on this slide, crossing roughly north to south. There are 2 scenic easements totaling 4.5 acres, shown in lime green shading, and in purple an equestrian access easement, which is 10 feet wide along the eastern edges of the property. Those were placed on the parcel at formation by the subdivision in 2002. In addition, a 40-foot wide Pacific Gas and Electric easement crosses north to south within the developable area, and it is shown in orange. The parcel is mostly sloped in excess of 25%. At some point, about a decade or so ago, an access path was made on slopes to the prospective development site and the PG&E easement area. It is an unpaved area of 7,034 square feet. The site design makes use of this previously graded area for about half of the driveway and a portion of the area proposed for the main dwelling. Other areas that were previously graded are proposed to be improved with a landscaping plan. So the areas that were previously graded are now pointed to on this slide. And the area that was previously graded and can be improved with landscaping plan and restoration, like with natural materials, is now circled on this. The application plan set includes sheet C 4.2, which is a breakdown of slopes in relation to the proposed development, and that's what we're looking at here. The area proposed for the top of the driveway with a hammerhead per fire regulations and the main dwelling, as well as the ADU, are proposed in locations which are not sloped in excess of 25% for the most part. They are sloped. The area under the proposed main dwelling has an average of 20.8% slope, and the area under the ADU is an average of 16.3%. Approximately 7,000 square feet of the proposed development area is sloped in excess of 25%. About half of the proposed grading on slopes is new. 35% of that is for a septic system, shown in orange arrows with smaller elements between the arrows, and areas to the east of the proposed dwelling, while 11% of the grading is under the proposed dwelling on man-made slopes. And storm drainage controls will be added as 3% of the new grading on slopes from the point at the end of the blue arrow down the south side of the driveway.
If I may interject, just excuse me for the interruption, Ms. Israel. So there was a delay in the Zoom broadcast beginning. And so for individuals who are on Zoom and may have missed the first slide, we just wanted to advise that this presentation is for item number 7 on the Planning Commission agenda, PLN 220214, Dublin F2 Inc. Thank you.
Thank you. And just to revisit this slide for the benefit of the people just joining on Zoom, this parcel is in the Visual Sensitivity District, or VS District, and the requirements for that district are that structures are located and sited so as to minimize grading and visibility from common public viewing areas. The grading on slope is not expected to negatively impact the viewshed. In fact, existing scarring on the parcel will be improved or landscaped. The 2010 General Plan Conservation of Open Space element, the Greater Monterey Peninsula Area Plan, as well as Title 21, regulate development on slopes greater than 25%. Findings are made that there is no feasible alternative which would limit the development to slopes of greater than 25% on this parcel. And furthermore, when you consider the balance required to protect the public view shed in the VS district or the proposed development better achieving the view shed protection, it is met. The proposed erosion control plan would stabilize the slopes around the development after grading, as shown in this draft erosion control plan that came with the application package. A large portion of the development on slopes will be temporary in nature. 2 photographs from the forest management plan prepared by Frank Ono are shown here to illustrate the existing conditions. The photo at the top is looking south from within the proposed development area. The photo at the bottom is the view northwest toward the private road from within the access path. The forester who developed the project-specific forest management plan, or FMP, estimated the lot is approximately 1/3 forested. Coast live oak are the dominant trees, and as shown in this photo, from higher up on the parcel's ridge than where the house is proposed, it's a pretty standard oak woodland stand. Over the history of this project's development application reviews, tree removal counts went from 36 up to 46 and down to 35 protected oak trees proposed for removal as the design changed to improve protection of visual resources and then forest resources. The FMP concluded that the project as previously proposed, with all 46 oaks removed, not 35, would not significantly reduce the availability of wildlife habitat over the long term. As proposed, 1/3 of the remainder of the property containing oak woodland would remain undisturbed. The FMP estimated permanent impact to woodland by the development was 0.5 acres in the first most expanded site plan. Therefore, in the original site plan, as much as 15% of the native canopy would have been removed. As you know, removal of more than 3 protected trees requires a use permit in the inland zone pursuant to 2164-260 of the zoning ordinance. And the general plan, the 2010 general plan, as well as the Greater Monterey Peninsula Area Plan, policy GMP 3.5, discourages the removal of healthy native oak and other trees within the Greater Monterey Peninsula planning area. Furthermore, in the RC zoning district, any development must be subordinate to the long-term health and viability of the oak woodland. So the project as designed requires removal of 35 coast live oak trees, ranging in size from 6 to 34 inches diameter, and that's at 24 inches from the ground. That's in association with the construction phase of this homestead. The one landmark tree recommended for removal is shown on this slide as a darker green star. It's between the main dwelling and the ADU. I did attach all the forest management plan and the other arborist reports, so I recommend that the planning commissioners refer to the second addendum arborist report, which was written with this latest redesign for the accurate tree count. The project redesign shows an effort to minimize tree removal. Therefore, the project can be found consistent with the VS district regulations, and a finding can be made that tree removals are minimized as part of granting this use permit. I also want to note that a biological report by Pat Regan recommended a bird nest survey prior to tree removals, and therefore that condition, number 11, is applied to the project. Staff has reviewed the FMP to addenda and agrees with their conclusions for the most part. The FMP stated that portions of the site surrounding the development appear to have ample room to replant the oaks that were removed without creating an unhealthy, overcrowded stand. The replanting is 1-to-1 for all coast live oaks and 2-to-1 ratio for the one landmark oak. The FMP and addenda recommended the owner optimize stand health by placing new trees in locations within 10-foot diameter circular openings in the stand. As this is a protected view shed, the owner shall replant the oaks on edges of the construction area and driveway while avoiding the PG&E easement. So I do loosely suggest areas with this green line on the map there as to the optimal areas to replant. Where staff differs in the number of years is the number of years that the owner would be required to employ an arborist to report on survivorship. The period was limited to 1 year by the Thompson addenda. 1 year of maintenance does not guarantee survivorship, And given that this is part of a VS district, staff added 3 years to the monitoring requirement of condition number 14, tree replacement, for the purpose of visual resource protection. So the replanting plan shall be approved by HCD staff during condition compliance. Trees shall only be removed after construction permit issuance. And tree and root protection for those trees near the construction which will not be removed is also required per condition number 9. Evidence of the protected tree's survival and the replanting of 36 new saplings shall be provided to planning prior to construction final. There was a letter from a neighbor sent in response to the hearing notice. The party lives next door and was concerned with tree removals and the potential to destabilize the hillside. He later wrote to the Planning Commission again to say he didn't realize the trees would be replanted, and he retracted his concerns. His other concerns about soil disturbance by grading, as well as soil disturbance by tree removal, wanted to note the soil shall be stabilized temporarily by an erosion control plan, and during the use phase of the project where slope areas are not dedicated to driveway or drainage controls, they shall be landscaped, used for oak replanting, and restored to natural materials. And those are cited in conditions of approval 12 through 14. Dublin F2 Inc. project design is a 2-story structure and ADU with a modern architectural style incorporating traditional Japanese influences. The right side of this slide shows the elevations of the main dwelling, which reaches a height of 16.5 feet from average natural grade. The first floor of the main structure is the collector's garage, which is 4,450 square feet. The second floor is a 3-bedroom habitable space with 2 second-floor patios that total approximately 1,512 square feet on the west end, and separately approximately 200 square foot garden area on the southeast. The roof is flat, minimizing the height and in keeping with the architectural design. The left side of this slide shows a bird's eye view of a 3D rendering of the full site. As part of the design approval, let's look at the ADU, which is 1 story, 3 bedrooms and 2 baths, and it has its patio at the ground. It also has a flat roof. The ADU maximum height is 14 feet 7 inches from average natural grade. The ADU utilizes the same materials and shares design elements. Colors and materials for both the main dwelling and the ADU are gray board form concrete, blackened metal siding, stucco with black paint, and clear anodized glazed glass. Doors, window frames, fascia, and railings are proposed as black metal. The dark-colored architecture is designed to recess into the forest. The proposed structures are staked and flagged. During staff site visits, staff noted many similarly sized residential structures in the neighborhood, as shown in this photograph. As required by the code, staff conducted a visual impact assessment pursuant to Chapter 2146, Visually Sensitive Overlay District Regulations, and found, number 1, there was no ridgeline effect, and number 2, the minor impact to viewshed would be minimized due to distance from roadways. Laurales Grade is the only one of 3 scenic routes which has any view of the development. A view of the development site is available only when you're on Laurales Grade, angled toward the site at a distance of approximately 0.6 miles. Otherwise, the site's topography blocks it from view. In addition, the area surrounding the proposed development is forested and well screened from Laurales Grade. One small corner of the main dwelling's second floor and flat roof would be visible from this hilltop, as shown in the picture, and that is at regular focus, as if you're looking at it with your own eye, unaided vision, as we say. And that would only be visible for about 1 to 2 seconds when traveling in the normal speeds on Laurales Grade. And that seemed to staff to sufficiently limit impact to visual resources of the area. Staff anticipates that the corner will be most visible immediately after construction and the associated tree removal. However, tree replanting with sustained husbandry to 100% survivorship is anticipated to return the canopy's fullness at approximately 25-foot height around the structures, and the main structure is approximately 3.5 feet shorter than the maximum height zoning requirement for the area. So this, combined with dark tones proposed for the colors and materials, will maximize the screening of the development. The project is conditioned to limit exterior lighting, so the light sources are not visible from public viewing areas, and that is condition number 15. Therefore, development on this parcel would not adversely impact the public viewshed along a scenic route. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission find the project will not have significant effect on the environment and qualifies for a categorical exemption as one residential home on a lot which allows residential use as a primary use. ADUs are usually approved ministerially by County of Monterey Housing and Community Development, as they are streamlined by state housing laws. The categorical exemption is therefore Class 3, pursuant to CEQA Guidelines Section 15303. Staff recommends the Planning Commission approve the combined development permit for a new 2-story single-family dwelling with attached garage and maximum-sized ADU. Use permits to allow the removal of 35 oak trees and allow development on slopes greater than 25%. As part of the action, staff requests that a 17th condition of approval for an indemnification agreement be added to the conditions of approval attached to this resolution. This concludes staff's presentation. Thank you for your patience, and staff is available for any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Israel, for that good, complete presentation. Much appreciated. Commissioners, do you have any questions for staff? I see none up here, but I'm going to ask for a couple of things to understand. I'd like to go, first question is, I don't see any fire conditions on here, and I know they're pretty extensive revegetation conditions. How do those two fit together so that we have taken into consideration the required fire clearance when we're talking about what we're asking people to do with landscaping?
Sure. So especially during this time when the fire district staff are busy addressing fires in the greater region, fire district staff have asked to not be as directly involved in the planning permit conditions of approval because that they have limited staffers that would have to then administer the conditions of approval per our condition of approval and mitigated monitoring program. So instead, they add those requirements at the construction permit phase, and they require that it's all there at that time. So that's why you don't see conditions of approval. However, there is a fuel management plan that is in draft form presented in Frank Ono's FMP that's attached to this project, and it recommends the traditional, the CAL FIRE required limbing of the lower branches of trees, but not tree removal near the structures, and then clearance of the ground cover so that.
So my question has to do with exactly that, which is, given that we have to limb trees up and limit all kinds of understory, how does that impact our need to address the viewshed protections? Because a lot of the tree replacement is going to be about what we're asking people to grow these things in order to protect our viewshed and our habitat. And without the fire department telling us exactly what they're going to require, if we come into construction and they say, oh no, you've got to cut down everything here, we end up putting the owner in the situation of getting two conflicting pieces of requirement. And so how do those two interact, and have we taken into account the impact of required fire clearance on all of our replanting, restoration, and viewshed protection?
Thank you, Chair Deal. I do believe that this can be addressed. As you can see in this photograph that was taken by staff, by the only vantage point that any part of the staking and flagging was visible. It's actually from above, so the blocking is by canopy and not by the kind of vegetation that would be closer to the ground or the limbing that's closer to the ground that would be affected by the fuel management plan. So given that this is on a private road that is accessed off of Loralis Grade, there isn't like a close view from a public access point where they would see the project from standing level and look through cleared, fuel management areas. And then also as you drive closer, which staff has done a couple of times here, the natural shape of the topography continues to swell and alter, and the structures are behind a ridge, and there's just such a steep topography, you're not going to see it from Loralis grade, or from Highway 68, or from Carmel Valley Road. So I hope that answers. It's more about
And
viewpoint.
let's just add to it ground stabilization. Are we assuming that there are engineered structures that will deal with all of the ground stabilization, or are we depending on some sort of vegetative control?
There is a proposed landscape plan that will be amended so that it's final, so that it meets the Greater Monterey Peninsula Area Plan's requirements for natural materials and local natives, but it does show the kind of plantings that would stabilize the soil in addition to engineered stabilization that's in the civils that were presented. Staff did cut down the size of the plan set that's presented for your review because it was enormous and would have been really hard to download for public as well as commissioners. But in the plan set that's in Acela, there are many more sheets that show engineered stabilization.
Okay, so that's not going to be affected by any requirements from the fire department. So they're not going to say you can't have this landscaping because it's not fire safe. It's all worked in already. I just don't want to put people in the position of getting two sets of requirements that don't match. That's always something to be aware of, particularly with the fire department being otherwise occupied.
Understood.
All right, and then I just want to could we go back to slide number 7, I think it is, that shows the general site plan and the septic? So the request for grading, it says that a significant portion of the above 25% slope was for the septic systems. So can you just run me, I guess, so I really understand where the 25% slope that it has not already been graded occurs and how the septic fits in? Because the contours here make it look like we're putting the septic system on a pretty steep slope, certainly the replacement system. And that, if the replacement system were required, it seems to me would be a great deal of grading. So I'm just trying to understand how much happens now, what are we looking forward in the future, and how does that relate to the request for the ability to, the use permit to develop on slope?
Sure. Chair Deal, if you don't mind, I'd like to just go back to slide 6.
Sure.
Or actually, slide 5. So this slide is showing the slope analysis that was prepared by the engineering team for this project. And there is a color code system that has, because it's in black and white, it has a lot of kind of elaborate hatch marks and different patterns. Staff didn't, with the advice of management, did not put that legend on this. So instead, we're explaining it through arrows. So the area that's shown where it is darkest to the right side of this site plan is slope greater than 25%, and that is development for the first of the, I think that's first. Yeah. Septic system zone 1, leach field. There's also some septic system proposed tank and pump that's just above that. And there's a call out to it that's very subtle right here. That area as well is going to be a little bit of development on slope and the corner here. So a lot of that is happening there. And then this area in the beige on this side is also development on slope. So yes, a significant amount of the development on slope is for the septic system. It says over 1/3.
All right, so we can't build this house without excavating these slopes. So is the secondary septic system grading already calculated into these numbers? Or are we leaving that for later?
I would have to defer to Environmental Health Bureau staff. I'll see if someone
We're
is
just
on.
not used to having septic systems on slopes of over 25%. And if we're significantly modifying a site to allow that, I have some issues with that as a precedent. So maybe Environmental Health can help us with that. But that's a lot of slope for traditional wastewater disposal.
Connor Cappy has his hand up. If we could recognize him, he'd be happy to speak to this. He's with Environmental Health Bureau.
Thank you, Mr.
Good morning, Planning Commission. This is Connor Cappy of Environmental Health, reporting electronically. Mary, thank you so much for talking about the septic system. You referred to it as a leach field, and I did want to clarify that the proposal for this site is going to feature what's called a drip system. That is a shallow form of dispersal that, per Monterey County Code 1520, Table 8, allows on development on slopes between or up to 50%. I'm sorry. So the septic system is going to feature a supplemental treatment unit. So this is going to be pre-treated wastewater before it reaches the ground. And that's why it's allowed or proposed on the steep slopes on the site.
So if I may, does that system require that that area of the site be graded, and if so, how much?
I would have to double check the OUTS feasibility report that was prepared to give you a clear answer to that question. But ultimately, a drip dispersal field being installed on the steep slopes, whether it's graded or not, if it's graded, then it would be installed in engineered fill. And I can pull up the septic system design to verify that that's the case.
Okay, well, I'm trying to understand the impact of this on the underlying substrate. I mean, we're assuming it's not going to destabilize anything. It's being above the house, it looks like.
No, that was part of the septic system feasibility report. If a septic system is going to be proposed on steep slopes, we typically see these drip dispersal designs. That's the way we are able to get that discharge onto these slopes.
And a pump, I take it.
Correct. Yeah, that's featured within the supplemental treatment unit. It's kind of like having a miniaturized wastewater treatment plant installed in your yard.
And y'all inspect and bond those, or how does that work?
Absolutely, yes. So we do our review on the septic system feasibility report and engineered design before we issue the permit. And once that permit's been issued, we do a final inspection of the system when everything is in the ground, as well as witness the startup of the system. And that's where somebody from the manufacturer of the technology is on site to basically make sure that all of these pumps and alarms are meeting the manufacturer's specifications.
Great, that's very helpful. And I'm still struggling with what exact physical impact does the installation of this kind of a system have on the ground underneath it? So if we're looking at a piece of undeveloped country on a slope, we're installing a system like that. Do we remove all the vegetation? Do we work around the vegetation? Do we make some sort of accommodation to bring the slope down to an appropriate level? What happens to the area that's in that crosshatch on the presentation? Is it going to remain pretty much like it is, only with some added engineering features, or is it going to be the characteristic of the underlying land going to be changed?
The characteristics of the land, it shouldn't change too much. No, if we would definitely be leaning on the engineers to tell us what is going to suit this site best. So if there was any grading proposed, that was likely due to whatever concerns they may have of the septic system, the treated effluent being discharged about a foot below the soil. So in terms of what that would do to the actual land itself, the drip dispersal field, it looks very similar to, if you're familiar with just standard garden tubing that you would see in any residential site. It looks very similar to that. It's a series of rubber tubes that have perforations in them to allow the treated effluent to all kind of come out at in a dosed volume. So because it's dosed, this isn't going to oversaturate the land. This is not going to provide a concern for landslide or anything. That is all reviewed by the engineer that designs these systems.
I'm sure that's true. I'm just trying to, from my point of view, we have that as development on slope that is protected. So I'm trying to determine what that development actually is going to look like to that slope. So are we taking off all the vegetation and putting it back on and replanting it? Are we working around native vegetation? Are we, what are we doing to it?
Yes, if there is vegetation in the area of the proposed drip field, then that would be removed. And then the property owners would be absolutely entitled to landscaping back over that drip system at will. This drip tubing is only going to be about a foot below the soil surface. So to do that, they are going to need to trench that through either with a hand by hand or with some sort of excavation tool. So that would remove any vegetation that would be there currently.
Okay, and that's helpful. And they would do this, they would not do this for the potential replacement area currently. They would have that in reserve, but it would not actually be done at the inception of the project. Is that correct?
I'm so sorry, I don't understand the question.
We have the main septic designated and we have a reserve area as is required. They don't have to prepare the reserve area during this phase of construction, right? It's something you can do later, right?
No, so per Monterey County's requirements, we do require a primary and secondary dispersal field to be installed with the issuance of a...
Okay.
Yes.
And my last, I promise, well, I don't promise, I may change my mind. My last question is this commonly used throughout the county currently, or is this unusual?
No, this is a very common system that we see. This is a system that isn't only proposed on sites with steep slopes. This can also be proposed to overcome high groundwater or other various site constraints, bad soil or good topsoil, bad soil below that. So yeah, we see these systems. I'm not going to say that they're common. I mean, the most common system that we see is just your conventional septic system. But yeah, these are proposed fairly regularly. And, you know, we find that they work well. Monterey County's list of approved materials has all been vetted by this team over the years. So we all know that this technology works well. And because of the way that they're inspected through that final inspection to make sure it was installed to the manufacturer's specifications, as well as having somebody from the manufacturer on site to make sure that it does meet those specifications. We've never really had concerns over these systems, and we do receive monitoring reports. That's part of the permitting requirements for these supplemental treatment units. Property owners are required to sign into a 2-year operation and maintenance agreement where, again, somebody from the manufacturer or a representative is coming to the site to service the system and make sure that the treatment is happening and that there are no adverse issues to the area that the wastewater is being discharged in.
Thank you, much appreciated, and thank you for being here to do that. Commissioner Gonzalez, was that your hand going up?
Thank you. Yeah, I have maybe a couple of questions as far as it relates to the comment of previously graded area. And,
Just a second, for my own information, is this for the representative from Environmental Health, or is this a general question for?
General question.
Thank you.
And the other piece relates to man-made slopes. And I guess my basic question is, since some of this area was previously graded, and was this done with permits or not? And the man-made slopes, I'm assuming, I think I know the answer as far as man-made slopes, but how did those come about? And so those are basically my two questions as far as it relates to the graded area and as it relates to man-made slopes. And that's for staff. Thank you.
Through the chair, Commissioner Gonzalez, staff did look into the possibility that there was a grading permit on this parcel before, but I did not find one in the records. But bearing in mind that this subdivision goes back to 2002, it could have happened in that window of time when they were doing the subdivision and laying out the lines for the surveys and everything. I did notice that the on Google Earth, that when you go back and do a historical aerial photo review, it looked like it happened around 2002 to 2004. That's the best that staff can surmise. A long time ago.
And the piece about slopes, I'm assuming that the area that was being graded was used to create man-made slopes. I'm not sure, so I don't know how that came about.
Through the chair, at the site visit, it appeared to staff that the access path was getting up to the PG&E easement area, and there was some flattened area around that I'm not sure what the purpose of was, but that's the best that we could see.
Any other Commissioner Monsalve?
Thank you. Through the chair, can we look at the slide page, I think it's 8 or maybe 9, that talks about the tree replacements? Thank you, that's the one. It says 5 years monitoring for survival. Is that 5 years total? And you reported that the FMP talked about 1 year, but staff recommended an additional 3. And I see in the documentation a period of 4 years total. So what 5 years is this talking about? Thank you.
Through the chair. Commissioner Monsalve, sorry if there was any confusion. I think in the reporting, I had stated 4 additional years. So 1 year was recommended by the addendum number 2 by Rob Thompson, which is pretty much the guiding document for tree removal and tree replacement in this case, because it has the accurate count of which ones would be removed. And in that one, as the most recent submittal, it stated 1 year of monitoring. That is pretty standard for tree removals and tree replacements in county, and it does adhere with Title 16. However, due to the location in a visually sensitive corridor, a visually sensitive district, and along a scenic corridor, staff felt that it was more important to guarantee that it came up to full canopy. So therefore, just to clarify for the record, this is 4 additional years above the 1 year that was recommended by the arborist for a total of 5 years.
Okay, thank you for that clarification, because as I read a couple different places, let's see, draft resolution, findings 1H, visual resources down at the bottom, it talks about a period of 4 years. Then again, finding 6, evidence C, therefore staff added 3 years of monitoring to condition 14 for a total of 4 years. And then condition 14 says annual report shall be continued for 3 additional years, total of 4 years tree monitoring. Okay. Thank you.
It's on my list too. Thank you, Commissioner. So the staff intention, to clarify, is 5?
No, sorry, it was set with 3 extra years. My apologies. This presentation was off by a year. My apologies.
To clarify, in all those places, it should say that the total is 4 years, right?
And it is correct. My apologies.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I just want to weigh in that 1 year is not normal around here for any trees we're requiring to be replaced, and anything that anybody says otherwise is incorrect in my experience. 1 year is never enough for tree replacement. Any further questions for staff? Seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and invite the applicant or the applicant's representative to come forward and say anything you'd care to say at this time. Starting with, if you care to, whether or not you are in agreement with the conditions of approval and have had a chance to review them. Welcome.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. I'm Peter Rosato. I'm architect for Mr. and Mrs. Harvey.
Our name isn't Dublin F2. It's Taz and Melina Harvey.
We appreciate you hearing our...
We got to get you on the microphone, and I think one at a time is probably the way that we'll have to do that for the record. So if you don't mind taking turns and identifying yourself, it'll help for the people who are doing it online.
Okay, so yeah, I'm Peter Rosato, architect for Mr. and Mrs. Harvey. I want to say thank you to Mary Israel. She did a really good job presenting. also working with us through the planning process of this project. She hit on a lot of the things we want to talk about there or discuss. There's really no reason for us to have that discussion again. But I do want to say a couple things that's really important to Taz and his family, and that's the passive strategies they want to use for this house. So the house is going to have solar energy. We want to use geothermal heating and cooling for the house to decrease energy usage, as well as to some of the comments for fire resistance. The exterior of the house, we have wood formed concrete at the lower walls. The upper walls would be metal stud. We're going to have a continuous insulation on the exterior of the stud, which is a rock wool that's a fire resistant insulation. And then on top of that, we'll have our metal siding. The roof will have a very similar assembly. And so we're very concerned about protecting the home from any potential wildfire damage. Did you have anything more to add to that?
No, good morning. Thank you for reviewing our plans. It's been a long time working on these and a lot of thought put into them. And we do have a big concern about fire, and that's what we used a lot of materials to mitigate that. Even if there's a fire nearby, I don't want my house catching on fire because there's a fire a mile away. So the roof and the surrounding areas are designed to be very fire resistant. And as far as the look goes, the concrete form board, I went on a trip to Japan and saw a really cool usage of that. And I also saw it downtown Monterey. I think the aquarium office building has that going on. So it's a cool look, and it's very fire resistant. It's not going to be the whole, but the lower part of it is.
We're here to answer any questions that you might have.
Have you had a chance to review the conditions proposed, and are you in agreement with them as they're written?
Yes, I've had a chance to review them, and I do agree with them.
Thank you. That's terrific. You'll have an opportunity if anybody else weighs in to respond to that, and appreciate your comments. If there's nobody else, is there anybody else in the chambers that wants to speak? Seeing no rush to the fore, I see no hands up on Zoom. Madam Clerk, am I missing anything?
There are no hands on Zoom and no additional emails.
Terrific. That being the case, there's nothing to respond to, so thank you very much. And we will close public comment and come back to staff. Staff, anything to add?
Yes, Chair Deal. I do have something to add. Your earlier question about how the landscape plan would interface with fuel management is very important because this is a parcel that is in the very high SRA zone, which is the state responsibility area. So you'll note that the condition of approval for landscaping refers to Title 16, which is our relatively new landscaping ordinance. And within titles, then that's Chapter 1663. Within that ordinance, that also refers to having to work when you're in state responsibility areas, work to have your landscaping plan meet the requirements of Chapter 1856 of our county code, which is wildfire protection standards in state responsibility areas. So it is set up by design in the ordinance to make the landscape architect work with both codes.
Perfect. Sounds good. All right. Any further comments from staff? Seeing none, I'm going to bring it back to the commission. Commissioners, what's your pleasure?
Recommendation with the additions.
I'll second that.
Commissioner Gomez has moved, even though the microphone wasn't on, that we approve staff's recommendation with the corrections as noted. It's been seconded, I believe, by Commissioner Getzelman. Is there any further discussion? I only have one thing to say, which is I really appreciate the complete presentation on this. It was very helpful, and particularly helpful for me personally to have the environmental health technical advice available online. All right, that being the case, I'm going to go ahead and call for the vote. Madam Clerk.
Commissioner Shaw?
Yes.
Commissioner Getzelman?
Yes.
Commissioner Gomez,
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Yes.
Commissioner Work,
Yes.
Commissioner Mendoza,
Yes.
Commissioner Deal,
Yes.
Commissioner Monsalve.
Yes.
With Commissioners Roberts and Daniels absent, motion passes.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. That brings us right along to item number 8 on our agenda, which is PLN 230288, Glass, Timothy, John, and Constant. And who is presenting? Ms. Honorata, are you up for this one? I think, let you give a second or two to get organized here. Welcome.
Alex, can you please share staff right? All right. Good morning, Chair Deal and Commissioners. My name is Haya Honorado, and I will be presenting staff's report on PLN 230288 for Timothy and Constance Glass. The subject property is located at 124 Fern Canyon Road within the Carmel Highlands neighborhood in the Carmel area land use plan. The property is zoned as low-density residential, 1 acre per unit, with a design control overlay in the coastal zone. The project consists of the construction of a new 3-story single-family dwelling with an attached garage and carport, the removal of trees, and development within 750 feet of known archaeological resources. The site plan includes a new paved driveway, a decomposed granite driveway for emergency access, septic system, relocation of a 5,000-gallon water tank, and the removal of 8 Monterey pines and 1 coast live oak tree. The west and north elevations are shown here. The 3rd floor consists of a crow's nest office space and viewing deck. The north elevation is seen here and as seen from Fern Canyon Road. The colors and materials are consistent with Title 20 and the Carmel Area CIP, giving a general appearance of natural materials and muted colors. The Carmel Highlands is a mixture of house sizes and architectural styles throughout. These are examples of 3-story homes within the Carmel Highland neighborhood of similar massing or larger than the proposed development. A Phase 1 archaeological report concluded that no evidence of archaeological resources was found, and the county's standard condition is recommended. A biological assessment was completed for the project. It was noted that the parcel consists of a mixed woodland habitat with the presence of Monterey pine, coast live oak, and occasional cypress trees. The site was lacking the presence of special status species, sensitive habitat, or nesting birds at the time of the assessment. The county's standard condition for a notice report would include the implementation of resource protection measures, exclusionary fencing and silt fencing, control and eradication measures for invasive species, installation of plantings that are native to pine and oak woodland habitat, pre-construction nesting survey, and the replanting of 14 Monterey pine and coast live oak trees. Proposed tree removal includes the removal of 8 Monterey pine trees and 1 coast live oak tree. There are 5 landmark Monterey pine trees impacted by the proposed development that are recommended for removal, including 2 that are in poor condition and indicated here in red, and 3 impacted by construction that are indicated in orange. The remaining trees include the removal of 3 Monterey pine trees that is as indicated in blue, and 1 coast live oak tree that is indicated in yellow. There are 4 additional trees indicated in green here that were originally included in the tree assessment for removal. However, staff was able to work with the applicants to keep these 4 trees on the parcel. The proposed tree removal was reduced from 13 trees to 9 trees, and the recommendation with the recommendation to replant 14 trees with a 2-to-1 ratio for landmark trees and 1-to-1 ratio for the other trees. The project was brought before the Carmel Highlands Advisory Committee on May 20th. The LUAC members voted unanimously to recommend approval for the project as proposed. 2 letters were received prior to the LUAC meeting expressing concerns over the massing and height of the proposed development. The LUAC took the public comments into consideration and discussed other homes within the area that reflected similar size and massing, as well as 3-story homes within the neighborhood, and found the proposed design of the home is within the character of the Carmel Highlands area. The project also meets the section 15303 of the CEQA guidelines because it meets the intent of the exemption as a construction of a single-family residence on an undeveloped residentially zoned property. Therefore, it is staff's recommendation that the Planning Commission find the proposed project as presented today qualifies as categorically exempt from CEQA and approve a combined development permit to allow the construction of a new single-family dwelling, the removal of 9 trees, and development within 750 feet of archaeological resources. This concludes staff's presentation, and staff is available for questions.
Thank you. Commissioners, are there any technical questions for the staff? As usual, I've got something. We noticed that we're relocating a water tank. Can we go back and make sure that we have considered, I'm sure you have, this is more of a rhetorical question to get on the record, that we have considered the impacts of that action. We have had in the past situations where water tanks have shown up in places that weren't evaluated for visual or sensitivity or other concerns. So can you run me back over the water tank relocation, where the tank was and where it's going, and how you analyzed it?
This location here is the proposed location for the water tank, and currently the water tank is back in this area around here.
Okay, so where it appears on the plans here is the proposed new location.
Yes.
And it was thoroughly analyzed with respect to tree removal and access and visual and everything else.
Yes.
Thank you. I appreciate having that on the record. All right. Anything else? Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you. Could you give me maybe an aerial map and show me, because there were some large houses shown to emphasize that there's a mix of housing sizes in this area. And I just wanted to see the relation to those large houses that were referenced in relation to this site, because I'm curious to know what the immediate neighbors' homes are. Through the chair, I know they're still working. I guess in the future, it would be nice if we're going to reference homes, I would love to see a map similar to how we do the tree map, so I can see where these homes are near the proposed location.
So I do have this picture pulled up right now. It's 119 Fern Canyon Road, and this is right around the corner from 124 Fern Canyon Road. And there are 2 houses kind of back to back that are both 3-story houses. We're trying to pull up Google Earth, but I don't know if that's going to be able to visually give you a good indication of how close these houses are.
Through the chair, I'm looking at a map on my own phone, and what were the other streets that the other homes were on, please?
Alex, could you please share HDMI? Thank you.
Okay, so I believe one of the addresses is right here, around this vicinity. So this is another area here where larger houses are around the corner from the proposed development. So this area is Mount Devon Road, and I had two example of two houses on that road, which are just a couple of streets over from Fern Canyon Road.
Through the chair, do you have examples of the houses that are, I guess, I don't want to sound rude. Are we searching for the larger houses and kind of throwing a wide net? When I'm very curious, just based on some of the concerns that were brought out at the LUAC meeting, I would love to see like the immediate neighbors. Does it fit in with the I know there's one house that it fits in with right next door, but the other ones, are they much smaller? Are they?
I don't think we're going to see that view from Google Earth, unfortunately, because we don't have that street view available for this area. However, with the one address, 119 Fern Canyon, there is another house adjacent to it that's also about the same size. They're both within the immediate neighborhood of where the proposed development is. And the LUAC members did discuss they did discuss the size of the proposed house and did find that it was consistent with the direction of what the Carmel area was headed as far as future development as well as existing development. There was a neighbor that was present during the meeting, and the neighbor did agree to the concept and voiced liking the proposed design for the neighborhood.
Thank you.
Further questions for staff? Seeing none, I'll invite the applicant or the applicant's representative to come forward if you wish and say what you might like to say. Welcome.
Good morning. My name is Sam Pidnick. I'm the architect for Tim and Connie Glass. Thank you, Haya, for that presentation. My clients, Tim and Connie, have been longtime residents of the area. They purchased this property back in 2018 and been working towards building a new home for themselves ever since. At the beginning of the design process, we spent considerable amount of time determining the best placement for their new home. There's an existing well and steep slopes on the northeast corner of the property, which we didn't want to build near. There's also a neighboring home to the northeast whose views we didn't want to block. Due to the setbacks required between the existing well in the northeast and a future septic system, which would have to go in the southwest portion of the property, we needed to keep that area free and clear of any development. We also wanted to utilize the existing driveway to minimize additional site disturbance, and didn't want to build right along the roadside to appear too imposing. Additionally, on forested properties such as this, some amount of tree removal is unavoidable, but we did strive to keep that to a minimum and arrived at just 9 trees proposed for removal. I don't know if we want to bring up the site plan, the proposed plan, but basically all these considerations, we arrived at a U-shaped home set in the back southeast corner of the property. Can we reference the site plan?
Alex, could you please share HDMI?
Yeah, that's perfect. Well, I guess that'll work. That's construction management plan. Maybe sheet A1.1. One more. Perfect. So yeah, we came up with this U-shaped solution along the south portion of the property. This east-west section of the home is the garage with the great room and kitchen above. On the eastern side of the property, that north-south wing will be the entry and 2 guest bedrooms on the ground floor, and then the primary suite above. And then on the kind of western of the home, that other smaller north-south wing, that'll be a 1-story area containing an art studio and a gym, and that portion will be set down about 5 feet lower than the rest of the house to kind of respect the slope of the site and try to minimize the amount of grading. And then in the center of the home will be our proposed permeable paver motor court and car turnaround area. The north and west facing elevations of the proposed home will maximize glazing to take advantage of the views towards the ocean of Point Lobos. And then the south and east elevations that face neighboring properties will have smaller windows and higher clear story windows to promote privacy. In the kind of back bottom right, southeast corner of the property, we are proposing an office that'll sit above the second floor. That's just about 280 square feet in size. The roof line over this office is only about 4 feet higher than the high point of the second floor roof line, which helps to kind of keep visual impact to a minimum. Haya touched upon this, but the proposed exterior materials include natural stone veneer, dark brown wood siding, stucco siding, and a dark brown metal roof. We think these materials and darker colors are more appropriate for the Carmel Highlands area and help the home to blend in better with the surrounding hillside, the pines and the oak trees. We did touch upon, the home's proposed compatibility with the Carmel Highlands. And I know there were a few letters submitted from neighbors. As Haya mentioned, this was also brought up at the LUAC meeting. A lot of those members do live in the immediate Highlands area, and they felt what we were proposing was consistent and compatible with what they're seeing around the Highlands. This area, of course, does have a diversity of architectural styles and sizes of homes. You've got small cottages built in the early 1900s. More recently, you're seeing, large, modern, white stucco mansions and homes in excess of 10,000 square feet and 3 stories. I think what we're proposing is, certainly in the middle of all that at about 4,000 square feet plus the garage. And I did send Haya a list of homes, some of which she referenced that are much bigger or similar size, but there are, certainly I think at least a dozen homes, similar square footage as you kind of look out on Fern Canyon Road and onto Mount Devon Road. So I do think what we're proposing, not only based on just the size, but the materials, the positioning of the house on the property, is certainly more than compatible with the Highlands area, and we don't think we'll have any major visual impact as seen from the neighboring homes or from the adjacent road. So we hope you'll agree with us this morning and vote to approve the project. Thank you.
Thank you. May I ask how much grading is associated with this proposal?
Yeah, let me get to those numbers. Of course, you don't want a slope site like this. We always try to balance cut and fill. It's not always possible. We're proposing approximately 400 cubic yards of cut and about 312 cubic yards of fill. So net cut of about 90 cubic yards.
Great, thank you. Any questions for the applicant's representative? Seeing none, thank you. I really appreciate that presentation.
Thank you.
All right, this is going to give me an opportunity to open the hearing to any members of the public who would like to speak on this matter. I have to say that I don't see a lot of people in the chamber, so I'm kind of assuming that there's no one here. And my screen has gone inconveniently blank, but Madam Clerk, do we have any hands up on Zoom?
There are no hands on Zoom and no additional emails.
That being the case, I'm going to go ahead and close the public comment and bring it back to staff. Is there anything that you'd care to add based on anything you heard?
Not at this time.
Great, thank you. Bring it back to the commission then. Commissioners. It's sort of in my neck of the woods, at being, since my great-grandparents built a house in the Highlands, and I have some historical perspective on the area. And I will say that I appreciate Commissioner Shaw's concerns about the neighborhood character because this neighborhood has been in significant transition for the past 50 years. And we have changed from what it used to be to something new. And to some extent, it's a little hard for those of us who remember the old ways. We used to be able to knock off on our fingers who all the people who lived in all the houses were in the same way that people can in neighborhoods that they care about. I appreciate that the LUAC did such a good job in considering the neighborhood character question because it's fundamentally subjective. And I think that sometimes the LUACs don't engage with it, which leaves me feeling like we need to. In this case, it was clear to me from the record that the LUAC substantively had that conversation and looked at the consideration from the local point of view. And I find that very valuable. And my thanks go out both to the staff for taking it to them and to the LUAC for doing that on the ground work. And then I just want to say that given getting over my basic conservatism and wishing things could be the way they were when I was a kid, this project doesn't ask for any special accommodations. It doesn't ask for grading on a slope like we just saw. It doesn't ask for any kind of variances. It has to go through the permitting process to deal with the trees and the issues that we have to consider with respect to archaeology. But it is clear to me that the design took into account the site and the rules, and I appreciate that. I really do. And so I'm happy to support this project in the way that it was put forward because of all those reasons, and appreciate immeasurably our excellent architectural professionals who are looking at the rules and designing something that actually complies with them rather than designing something that we have to have a huge conversation about exceptions. I just want to call that out because it's appreciated. Commissioners? I'd be happy to entertain a motion if anybody's ready to make one. Commissioner Gomez.
I'll second your motion.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
You want to say what it is?
I'm in support of staff recommendation.
Very well, thank you. It's been moved by Commissioner Gomez and seconded by Commissioner Shaw, was it? To approve staff's recommendation in this matter. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and call for the vote. Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Shaw?
Yes.
Commissioner Getzelman?
Yes.
Commissioner Gomez?
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez?
Yes.
Commissioner Work?
Yes.
Commissioner Mendoza?
Yes.
Commissioner Monsalve?
Yes.
And Commissioner Roberts and Daniels are absent. Motion passes.
Thank you. All right, that brings us to the bottom of our agenda, which says other matters. Are we having any other matters? I don't see any other matters. And a department report. Madam Secretary?
Thank you. Yeah, just a couple of items that I wanted to bring up today. One, the commission had requested to get regular updates on the Pebble Beach Company Equestrian Center matter, historical building matter. So I did just want today to provide the brief update that staff has conducted significant analysis of the materials provided. However, staff did receive within the last couple of weeks a new letter submittal, and I believe that letter was provided as well. My understanding was provided as well to the Planning Commission. And I'm sorry I'm bumbling because I will follow up if it was just a staff or if it was Planning Commission, and we will forward it. But staff is working to analyze working to analyze that new information provided so that it can come to a final conclusion on the item.
So that matter is currently everything, it's an all stop until the analysis can be completed. Is that where we are right now?
That is correct. The hold on the demolition permit remains in place until staff can conclude its research analysis.
Thank you. Anything else? I don't hear anything. Maybe you've got more on your list, Madam Secretary.
Why, I do. I also wanted to just alert the commission that yesterday on consent calendar, the Board of Supervisors took its final action on the Riverview project. In the end, that project was approved. And if you may recall, when it was here, there was a good deal of discussion around the affordable housing component of that project. And that final approval included 2 on-site moderates and 4 on-site low-income units. Those 4 on-site low-income units will be provided through duplexes on 2 separate lots. So that was so that project has been approved and will proceed into condition compliance. I also just wanted to make 2 announcements for some upcoming items. So the housing element, the updated draft, has been published for a 7-day public review period. It was published this Monday, the 12th, and comments can be received through the 19th of August. And the county staff is working to submit the draft on the 19th to California State HCD. And there is a presentation planned for an update at the Board of Supervisors on August 20th. We will then, after State HCD concludes its review, we will take the totality of all of that subsequent feedback and be developing then that subsequent, and that is a 90-day review period with State HCD. Also, the vacation rental ordinances, which were recommended with some modifications and policy questions from the commission to the board, remain on schedule for August 27th to be heard by the Board of Supervisors. Those are all the items I have, and I thank you very much.
And thank you. Is there anything else that we need to do before we conclude? Seeing nothing, I'm going to go ahead and declare this meeting adjourned at 11:43 this morning. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.